not be the guy for the job. Jerry Jones, your thoughts?
But seriously, where would you have a leadership void? Is it an experience void? Is it a talent void? Is it a leadership void? I'm not trying to be cute here. The answer is no. The answer is no.
I'm asking.
There's not a. Well, just shut up and let me answer it. No. When I go into the locker room, there's no leadership void in my eyes.
Former Cowboy Marcus Spears here with us. But Stephen A., this is your team, so I'm starting with you. In all seriousness, do you think that Dallas should get rid of Mike McCarthy at this point?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a foregone conclusion. He's not the man for the job. I'm not going to disrespect him by saying he's not worthy of being a head coach in the National Football League. I think this particular situation is not for him. And I think that, when you consider, to me, the ultimate indictment against him was bringing in Mike Nolan. When you got a guy that was last seen as a defensive coordinator 6 years earlier, and he had the second worst defense in the National Football League, and nobody has offered him a defensive coordinator's job for those 6 years, for you to lose your job with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, to be gone from the game for a full year, and pretty much a year and a half, going around different practices, talking to different coaches, studying analytics, learning the errors of your ways, supposedly, and all of this other stuff. And then you come back into a new job, and Rod Marinelli and Chris Rashad, they were doing a good job as a defensive minds for the Dallas Cowboys the last couple of years or so. And you walk in, and it's to bring in a dude that failed 6 years ago. You just showed that all of that stuff that you said you learned meant absolutely nothing. And in the end, when it comes down to Marcus, in all seriousness, this is what I said yesterday on First Take. You can see the players don't want to play for him. You can see it. Now, I don't know why that is the case. I'm not challenging. I want to be very, very clear. I am not challenging. I'm in no position. I'm not qualified to challenge Mike McCarthy's knowledge of the game of football. I know my basketball, and I covered it for damn near a quarter century, okay? But football, I'm watching, I'm a spectator, and even though Max and Marcus and Molly, I covered it. You know, you're a columnist, you're watching, and you see what you see.
You never had on the shoulder pads.
There you go. I didn't do that. So here's the deal. It's a totally different ball game, and I understand that. But what I do know how to do is listen to people who do know. Listen to aficionados. Hear the kind of things that they say. And utilize that as informational tools to gauge and judge the performance of somebody else. One of the things that made me incredibly successful as a beat writer and beyond in the newspaper industry and beyond, I always knew they would sit up there and say, you're not in this locker room, you're not in this locker room. So you know what I used to do, Max and Marcus, at the very beginning of every season? I would go up to the coach, and I would go up to the president of football operations or the president of basketball operations or whatever sport I'm covering, and I'd say to them, define success for me. Not just for this team, but for each individual personnel that's on this squad. And I would always judge according to what they said, define success. And it better be consistent, because the second it wasn't, I was going to pounce on them because I knew it. And what I'm saying is, you look at these guys, you see them with Dak Prescott. You knew that with Jason Garrett's a little bit too soft, too friendly with them, etc., etc. McCarthy was supposed to bring something different, and he certainly has. You know what he's brought? It's no fun being a member of the Dallas Cowboys, and it's not just because they're losing. They're not feeling this man. And you can see it. Well, you got to do what Arizona did. You just got to move in a different direction.
I'm actually ambivalent about whether you get rid of him now or at the end of the season, but he's got to go. And I think it's worse than you, Stephen A. You're like, I'm not saying he doesn't deserve a job in the NFL. I am. Not as a head coach. He just failed in his last one. He won a Super Bowl. You don't do that by accident. But the league is constantly changing, and the coaches who remain great are the ones who can adapt. Mike Tomlin, Bill Belichick. Andy Reid, right? They've adapted with the times. Their teams look different from year to year. Their philosophies change according to the particulars, right? Well, that wasn't Mike McCarthy. He had Aaron Rodgers and lost his job. Guys, how many times have you seen a quarterback as good as Aaron Rodgers and the coach loses his job? That means he wasn't good. Not anymore. Maybe once he wasn't good anymore. So Jerry Jones, the reason he's getting testy there when he's getting interviewed is because the guy who needs to go is Jerry Jones. When I walk into the locker room, I don't see an absence of leadership because you're not the best GM, Jerry. You and Stephen Jones are okay. You're not bad. There are worse GMs than the two of you. You average 8.5 wins for 10 years now. You got to be doing something right. I agree, no question about it. But you ain't the best. You're not elite. You're not in the top third even of GMs in the game. And now you're in a down cycle. And so what Jerry doesn't want to say is the GM needs an upgrade. And if the GM doesn't need an upgrade, who hired the coach? Who hired the coaching staff? Who drafted the players? Who signed the free agents? Jerry Jones and Stephen Jones. That's the issue. Whether or not you fire McCarthy now or at the end of the season doesn't matter. Cowboys ain't doing anything this year anyway, but he's got to go. They made a mistake. Cowboys don't usually hire and fire coaches quickly. In this case, they should.
A few points, man, because both of you are right. But let me start with this, because I think it's important to separate. Most teams that lose their starting offensive line will have a bad season. Most teams that lose their starting quarterback, who's one of the better quarterbacks in the league, top 10 at minimum, is going to have a bad season. Most teams that make a defensive change, philosophically, when you don't have guys to fit the personnel in which Mike Nolan wants to run this defense, are going to be bad on defense. But here's why I'm on the same boat about Mike McCarthy that both of you all are on. And Stephen A., you brought up a great point about what's the success and how does that relationship and conversation transfer. When I look at the Dallas Cowboys play, they have no answers. You're supposed, as a coach, you're supposed to provide answers. No matter how hard it is, when you lose your offensive line, you're supposed to provide answers. No matter how hard it is when you lose your starting quarterback, you're supposed to provide answers. No matter how much Mike Nolan thinks his system works, with his defensive guys and the way they're playing, you're supposed to provide answers. There isn't supposed to be the same mistakes being made week in and week out. When Zeke Elliott fumbles week 1 and 2, regardless of how much it took Dak to try to get you back in the game, that's supposed to be addressed week 1 and 2. When your offensive line has protection breakdowns, I'm not talking about skill, I'm not talking about talent level, I'm talking about communication and having the ability to at least get in the way. When that is consistent, when you're even at this point, that is a coaching problem. So to what both of you guys are saying, I'm not a proponent of firing Mike McCarthy after year 1, seeing the things that have transpired and decimated this team from an injury standpoint. I am a proponent when players aren't getting the right type of coaching and better week in and week out.
That's what we're talking about.
I can show you the cornerback previous week looking in the backfield, giving up a bomb over their head. I can show you Trayvon Diggs this week against the Washington football team, looking in the backfield, giving up a bomb over his head. I can show you defensively of them not having contained, gap integrity, linebackers not getting to where they're supposed to be. I can show you all things football when it strictly pertains to what is your message and how is your message being received by these players. You got guys talking about they don't believe in the coaching staff. Now you got Mike McCarthy talking about he didn't like the way they responded. You got Jerry Jones talking about a devoid of leadership. Your leader broke his ankle. The guy that you didn't want to pay broke his ankle, and now he's no longer in that locker room. And with what he was doing, Dak Prescott I'm talking about, holding these things together with the same devoid offensive line, he's home now. So, yes, there's a devoid of leadership, but there also is a devoid of coaching and messaging.
Go ahead, Max.
I just want to say, tell me a coach with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, doesn't have to be as good as Rodgers. It could be Drew Brees or Ben Roethlisberger or Tom Brady or Joe Flacco or, whoever, right? Like, show me a coach who lost their job because of underperforming. The NFL is all about coach and quarterback. That's it.
Well,
He lost his job with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback. Did John Harbaugh or Pete Carroll
you can bring that
ever
up.
have a situation like that?
No, they did not. But you could also bring this up, and obviously this individual doesn't compare to the names that you mentioned. But Steve Wilkes was in Arizona 2 years ago in 2018 with Josh Rosen as coach. You would think that he would have been given some patience. But after a 3-13 season, Steve Keim said, "I got to go in a different direction." After 1 year, obviously he moved on from Josh Rosen. He moved on from Steve Wilkes. He got in Cliff Kingsbury in there, who I didn't think deserved the job, but I can't deny is doing a damn good job this year. And obviously Kyler Murray's that dude. This brother can ball. What I'm saying is that in the end, you've seen a situation just a couple of years ago where an organization said, "We know we signed this dude to a multi-year contract." But after 1 year...
But his quarterback wasn't Aaron Rodgers. If he had Patrick Mahomes and lost his job, that would be something.
But we're talking about now because Andy Dalton is there, and we're still saying Mike McCarthy needs to go.
They won one game with Dak.
With this as well, when we talk about Mike McCarthy, but Max, I like your point about Jerry Jones. DeMarcus Lawrence, $100 million on defense. Paid Jalen Smith. Leighton Vander Esch been injured. But guys, like, let's be honest. Let's be honest about who Robert Quinn balling right now in Chicago. Wasn't he on this roster? Byron Jones balling in Miami. Wasn't he on this roster?
Well, you know what that means.
Thomas been sitting up there, and you know you've needed safety help.
That's right.
And you won't sign him.
Well, you know what that means, Marcus.
This is so... Stephen A.,
I'm
agreeing with you. I'm agreeing with what Max is saying. The bottom line is this. Dallas sold themselves on offense and didn't do what they needed to do on
Drafted
defense.
CeeDee Lamb, paid Ezekiel Elliott.
Yep. Don't listen to Marcus. You're falling for it. Here's the problem, and I'm going to end it with this because you've talked enough with the details, Marcus. Here's the bottom line. When you put on the Cowboys uniform, you get contaminated. Okay, that's what happens to you. And when you go elsewhere, you ultimately are able to showcase your true abilities. Being a part of the Dallas Cowboys, that black cat running around contaminates you. It infects you.
Just look at
with
Marcus
the
Spears.
All right, we gotta go.
You had to ruin a good football
Marcus Spears.
Marcus Spears is a big star now that he's off the
Oh
clock.
my gosh. Marcus Spears will see you on NFL Live
He's trying to
later.
go over the
The
football
only
analysis.
team
You're a
with a
Cowboy. That's
worse
what happened.
scoring margin than the Cowboys is the New York Jets. We will leave it
He might
there.
have a bad show this week just because of the Cowboys.
The Lakers, they just wrapped up the season with a ring.